Welcome, my name is Sergio Hinojosa and I'm a sales engineer at Dynatrace. Today I want to talk to you about putting your Bizdevops on Hyperdrive. This is a code session for Building the Future 2021. In this code session, we're going to see how to monitor all Azure services, monitor a Kubernetes cluster, an AKS, and as well as build a pipeline with automatic quality gates, right? So what is Bizdevops? Bizdevops is an approach to software development that encourages developers, operations, and business teams to work together so the organization can build better software faster, be more responsive to user demand, and ultimately maximize revenue. Right? It's breaking down the silos. So Bizdevops is a lot about culture, but it's also about having the proper tooling. This is why I want to introduce first the Dynatrace platform, which was built for all these teams to work together, for developers, for operation, and for business teams, right? So if you go to our website and click on the Dynatrace platform, you're gonna get this overview, right? So let me explain how this platform works, right? It is an all-in-one software platform, right? It's built on 6 solutions that can help you from infrastructure monitoring, get visibility into your hybrid cloud, full domain isolation to serverless pods, containers, all the way through your applications and microservices, getting the traces and the code visibility automatically. Also, it has application security built in to get runtime vulnerability detection and impact analysis. You will get also insights into your users. What are they doing? Where are they clicking? Are they having a problem, a performance problem, or errors, right? All that automatically. Also, you can unlock the business of your applications to get real-time business insights, impact conversions, the conversion rate of your applications, right? And as well as cloud automation, getting the quality gates, DevOps, site reliable engineering. You get the broadest multi-cloud and technology support, out-of-the-box integration with Kubernetes, with Azure, with your hybrid cloud, or even your data center. You'll get automatically traces, the metrics, logs, even the code level visibility inside those traces, a topology mapping on real time with network insights, with behavioral context, right? As well as you can expand the platform with our API, ingest open telemetric metrics, and automate with Captain. You get support for over 500 supported technologies like Nginx, Node.js, Redis, Azure IoT Hub, Java Insights. And you get an easy and open automated integration with technologies like ServiceNow, OpsGenie, Slack, GitLab, and many more. So you get one platform with 5 groundbreaking capabilities. It starts with the one agent, which is a continuous automatic discovery and observability across your full stack. You will get insights into the process and applications, right? You get the pure path, which is a distributed tracing and visibility down to code level. All these pure paths, all these traces are put into a Smartscape, which is an automatic real-time topology mapping with context of your IT infrastructure. On top of that, you get Davis or deterministic AI, right, which automatically recognizes problems and the root cause, and it gives you answers, and it can hyperscale. So Dynatrace comes in 2 flavors, as SaaS or managed. In managed, you have the data in your data center, the data and the processing, or you can have SaaS, where the Dynatrace Cloud takes care of the data and the processing of all the collected metrics from the one agent. Right? Now that we have seen an overview of the platform, let's see how to get value across development, operation, and business teams. Right? For business intelligence, for better business outcomes, for operations, how to enable autonomous operations, and for development, how to build better software faster and all teams together, looking at one platform. We will start with operations. How to get advanced observability for the entire Azure infrastructure, right? Get visibility at scale of hosts, VMs, containers, out-of-the-box support for all your Azure services, right, on how to accelerate Azure cloud migrations. For this, let's start with an integration of an Azure subscription, right? How easy it is to start monitoring an Azure subscription. Okay. For this, we're going to open Dynatrace platform, click on Settings, Cloud and Virtualization. We click on Azure, Connect New Instance. We give it a name to this connection, something like Azure Subscription, right? We put the client ID, which is the app that is allowed to talk to the API of Azure, right? We put the tenant ID, which is your tenant ID, and the secret key of your tenant ID. We select all resources and then click on Connect. Automatically, you're going to get all the performance metrics of your Azure subscription. We're going to see the dynamics of the environments, all the VMs, the load balancers, right? All the databases, the database components, database names, the servers, where these databases are running, the storage accounts, the blobs, the count of them, the capacity, the tables, the different queues, the Redis instances, for example, the connected clients, or the app services, the web apps that are running with the metrics and the traces of all your web apps and real user monitoring as well, the scale sets. So let's click on one of the scale sets. This is a service fabric with 3 VMs, right? So let's jump into one VM. We can see all the monitoring of this, all the metrics of this VM, the CPU of the VM and Azure, the memory, the events of the VM, all the tags automatically imported of the VM, the different region. So let's click on the 3 dots and go into the Smartscape. So in here we can see the real-time topology, how the host is communicating with other hosts, incoming and outgoing connections, and the processes running on the host, right? So we can see all the processes automatically detected and the services, meaning the traces of these processes, right? We can see that this service is load balanced and is running on 3 instances on 3 different hosts on one data center. Right? Really cool, right? So now let's take a look at how to monitor an AKS, an Azure Kubernetes Service Cluster, right? This is really easy. So we go into the settings, Dynatrace deployment, click on Start Installation. We select what we want to monitor. In this case, it's a Kubernetes cluster. So we select the platform, we select the token, we select the API token, then we copy the command. We're going to install it with Helm, right? So let's open the CLI. We have 3 nodes. So let's add the Helm repository, then create a namespace for Dynatrace. After we create the namespace for Dynatrace, we click on Helm. We select Helm install, right? And that's it. Now the one agent operator rolled out in your Kubernetes cluster, and it's going to monitor all your Kubernetes worker nodes automatically, and then all the pods in your worker node. So taking a look at Dynatrace, we can see here this is our AKS cluster that we just recently started monitoring. We can see the cluster utilization, the request, the limits, so you can see how much is utilized, all the Kubernetes events of your pods, the image pulled, the containers had started or not. Then we can take a look at the node utilization. We have 3 nodes. Let's open one node, right? In this worker node, we can see the memory, the network, disk of the worker node. We can actually see the 3 problems that were detected automatically, right? With no configuration, the CPU utilization of a worker node was saturated. And on the right, we can see all the different pods running inside and the different events, okay? So let's take a look at the different containers. And if we take a look at exactly that time that the CPU went high, we can see that it was the backend pod of a Tomcat pod, right? That consumed all the CPU. We see the services and the traces of that pod, right? All the properties automatically imported of your applications, okay? What about monitoring multiple Kubernetes clusters? In this custom dashboard, we can see the different Kubernetes clusters. They can be in different clouds. We can take a look at the utilization of all your different Kubernetes clusters, right? So in here, we're taking a look at 3 different clusters. We can see the resource quotas. So you can put quotas on your namespaces and on your applications, and you can see how much available of the quota you have, okay? So then let's take a look at the container usage and health. All the different pods running in your clusters, in multiple clusters, the different namespaces, the applications running in there, the CPU request, memory request, the container usage. Also, let's support performance engineers and take a look at the traces of your containers, right? Like different, and these are like the pure paths, distributed traces, all the containers talking to each other. We can take a look at the failure rate, the database usage, the pods with most usage, the request count, and the 95th percentile, right? And last but not least, the user experience, all the applications and the live users of your Kubernetes applications, right? And all of these automatically. Now that we have seen how easy it is to integrate and monitor Azure environments and Azure Kubernetes service, let's take a look how we can empower developers, right? So in this example, we're going to take an application and shift it through the Azure pipeline, right? And build an automatic quality gate, meaning we're going to make sure that every release is better than before, or at least the same but not worse, right? With an automatic quality gate. So for this, we're going to take an application. This is going to be Easy Travel. This is the application running on an Azure VM. We're going to do a login because all these functionalities need to make sure that they work in every release, right? So we do a search for Cancun or a journey. We select the journey. We book the journey. We keep the credit card details, right? We validate the credit card. And we make a successful booking, right? So this we want to do automatically with a load test, right? So for that, we're going to open JMeter. JMeter is an open source load testing application, right? So let's open the test plan, the JMX file. This is called Easy Travel Random Booking. This is the test plan, so we have all the parameters in place, so we can control the amount of users, the amount of loops, so we can do a load test with 100 users, 5 users, 1,000 bookings to a specific URL, right? It is a session-based load test. We have a script where we can pass dynamically in the header the different test steps, right? So for example, we can take a look at the home page, the login, the search, select the journey. So all these different HTTP requests with get and post are going to be done automatically. So when we run the load test, we can see all of these tests are run successfully, right? And on this example, we're running just 3 samples, right? So we did 3 bookings. Now let's take a look at the pipeline, right? So we have an Azure code repository, a Git repository, where with the Azure pipeline, we're gonna trigger every hour a build, right? So there are 6 different builds, 1 which is deployment 0, right? No code changes, and 5 code changes that are bad, right? There are different problem patterns. We're gonna create a build artifact, and this build artifact is gonna trigger a release. This is gonna go to staging, and this is how staging looks like, right? We're gonna send a cloud event to Captain. First we deploy the artifact, right? After we deploy it, we're gonna send a cloud event to Captain. In this cloud event, we're gonna tell, hey Captain, these are my SLIs and SLOs, right? The service level indicators and objectives, meaning the response time, throughput, failure rate, all that we want to validate, right? We send the JMeter file, the JMX file, and we select the performance strategy, meaning how much load do we want to trigger, how many loops, how many bookings. 500 bookings, 1,000 bookings. So in this case, we're going to make 500 bookings, session-based bookings, right? And we'll let Captain know, hey, we finished the deployment, please do the load test and the validation, right? Now, let's see this in action. So we have this custom dashboard where we see all the systems linked together. We have easy travel, the staging environment, and we can notice there was a load test running, right? With 5 users, 100 loops, 500 bookings. We see the duration of this load test. We can see the different functional steps, the response time of each functional steps, and the amount of transactions per functional step, right? The amount of exceptions per step, and the duration of all these load tests. On the top right, we see the synthetic test and an overview of the system. But let's take a look first of Azure pipelines. So if we open the pipeline, we can see the different builds, right? So this is a build, a job that runs successfully, and for the job, we're going to create a release automatically. We see that this release failed in the staging environment. So let's open this release. We see that it failed because the evaluation failed, meaning after the deployment and the load test, there was a validation, and the validation failed with a score of 87, which we are not, we don't want to make it pass to production, right? So we can see the different deployments, and we have the different events. So after we let Captain, there's a deployment done. It's gonna do the test for us with the parameters that we told, and it's gonna validate with the SLI SLOs that we configured, right? So this is a comparison of release of end-to-end testing done automatically, okay? So we can see each line is a release, and one passes through production, and all 5 problems were detected automatically, okay? So we can see the different SLIs like the throughput, response time, and the KPI. So we have architectural validation like the CPU, the amount of transactions, but also business relevant validations like the journeys that were done, and this can be a static threshold, like we want to have less than a second, or can be a relative value, right? Like less than 10%, for example. So again, so we get an overview of the whole system, and on the right side, we can manage also the time. So we can see this is a different load test, and we see how the time changed, and it was not, it didn't pass successfully. We have some exceptions, and the time was took a long time. If we take a look at the service flow, this is done automatically, right? So we can see the flow of the transactions through the service automatically, right? From the vertical stack, and also through which host are they doing. So now let's filter, for example, for a specific kind of transaction, like the login, right? So we can get the architectural view of the login, right? We see 2,000 requests going through the authentication service, going all the way to the database, and also calling the verification service, right? Running into this Azure VM, which is our staging environment. This is an overview of the service. We get all the tagging was done automatically, in which process is running, who is calling this process, right? The services that this service calls, right? And as well, all the dynamic requests. We got all the events on the right side, right? This is the result of the quality gate that we can see. The result of it, we have a link to the Captain Bridge. This was triggered by Visual Studio, by Microsoft Visual Studio at TFS automatically, and we see when a performance test was started and ended. We also see what we deployed here. For example, here is the CPU load journey service deployment, right? If we go back 1 hour before, we can see, for example, this deployment passed, right, with a score of 97.5. Which this is the deployment none, which is the 0. We don't have a problem pattern here, and everything works as expected, right? So, but more important is, if something breaks, why did it break, right? So let's take a look at the diagnostic tools the developer has at his fingertips. So this is the whole load test, and we can take a look at the different requests, and these are the test steps, right, that were passed through the HTTP header. The login, the search, with the response time, and the different metrics. So we can also take a look at the failures, but more important, we want to make a comparison. So if we click on compare, we can compare with any other build. In this case, we're selecting a build 1 hour before, which was the build that passed successfully, right? We see this is the same load, but the time is different. Why? Because the session-based load test. So we can see the CPU in this case goes to the roof in comparison to the other one. And this is the CPU per transaction, right? The load, it appears is higher, but it's just on a compact time. Why? Because the session-based load test, we're making the same amount of transactions. So now let's take a look at the different test steps, right? If we clap the test step, we can see calculate recommendation and the random search. The time has an increase of 1.6 seconds for before was 30 milliseconds, right? So let's filter and take a look why calculate recommendation has an increase of 1.6 seconds, right? This is the distribution of the time, and we can see that the increase of the time is done on the journey service, right? It has a higher increase of time. It calls 6 times the service, and each time has an increase of 200 milliseconds, right? So 270 milliseconds per call makes an amount of 1.6 seconds, right, of this one single transaction. So this service is being called 5 times. So let's take a look at inside the service. So now we're inside the journey service, and we can take a look that the database usage, right, doesn't have a lot of increase of the response time, even though we can see automatically which database statement change. We have new database statements, the change in invocation, the contribution, right? So we can see everything that changed on the back end automatically, and the increase or decrease. So we have the increase, but most importantly is in code execution. So there is some bad code on this deployment that is Dynatrace telling us, right? So we see that the code execution is a lot, and it's on the easy travel package, right? So let's take a look at the code that changed, and we can see the contribution all the way from the stack trace, right? From all the load tests that we did. So we can see in the find journey service, check destination, and we can just continue drill down and see where is the time going is being consumed. And we can see this is on the location parser. This is some kind of loop in the calculate section index. So we can even take a look at the source code from Dynatrace. We're gonna download the class and decompile it. This is the bytecode viewer, where we can see the same method, parse section and loop, and this is this is pretty much a loop, right? Where we can see the while loop, which is consuming all the CPU on the function, right? And this is what your developers have at their fingertips. But this is not all. So they can also take a look at the release inventory. So Dynatrace keeps tracks of the releases automatically that you deploy, right? The same, you have diagnostic tools. You can take a look at the threads, the different thread states, right? The thread groups and the single threads. You have threads that are blocking yourself or not on your application. The same with memory. Memory profiling, you can see the amount of survivors in your JVM, the amount of classes and the size of it, which is taking and consuming your garbage collection, right? Which method it was and which API it was. As well, you have other diagnostic tools like exception analysis, the top database statements, and many, many more. Right. Now let's take a look how to empower your business team, how they can improve the business and deliver better business outcomes with real-time visibility into the business KPIs, closing the loop with operations and development. Right? So, this is, for example, Easy Travel in production, where we can see the problems that affected the user satisfaction, the booking status. So let's open, for example, an SLO dashboard for production, where we can see the amount of bookings. We can see the amount of thousands of dollars or euros per hour, the amount of bookings per hour, the response time for the bookings, the conversion rate, how many users are being converted, right? Or the bounce rate, also very important metric to keep track for marketing teams. This is an overview and out-of-the-box dashboard for your application. We can see here where the users are coming, the geolocation, the different user actions, the asynchronous actions and synchronous actions, and the performance metrics, also the availability of the site, and very important, the user behavior. We can take a look how many active sessions are you having, the user engagement, at what time are your users more active and not, and important as well, the conversion rate, right? How many users are being converted, and most importantly, if you have a problem, Dynatrace will recognize this automatically. This is a sample problem that was open for 28 minutes. It impacted 298 users. We can see the users that were impacted and the applications that were impacted, right? Also which requests and which applications, right? We have a synthetic test and EasyTravel.com application. The root cause was a database statement that was slower, right? So we can see the milliseconds because Dynatrace is keeping track of everything, all the transactions. Notice that these SQL statements were very slow. So we can see in the visual resolution how the problem evolved, right? How the database impacted these Tomcat services, Apache, Nginx, and lastly, the application and the end users at the end, right? So Dynatrace keeps track of everything automatically because it's baselining. So if we can take a look at the users, we can be proactive and tell them, hey user, I'm sorry you had a problem. If we don't believe it, we can even open session replay in this user. We can take a look at the session replay. This is come from the United Kingdom. We can see the operating system and all the different clicks. On the session replay, we see pretty much what the user was seeing. So this is a mobile application, a mobile browser, and we can see all the clicks that the user was seeing and the experiences, right? So we have, or you have, all user actions and all the requests at your fingertips. So if you were opening a user action, we can see all the elements that were downloaded, right? And we can follow these elements all the way to the backend. So here we can see a request that it was only a couple of milliseconds, but doesn't matter. With Dynatrace, you can go all the way with all the timings and the code level visibility of all the services automatically, right? So really, really, really cool, isn't it? Well, this was a really packed session. I was talking very fast and clicking very fast. I hope you get curious and you can go and visit us at our virtual booth. I would like to connect with you. Before I leave, I want to let you know we have our biggest event. It's called Dynatrace Perform. It's coming up next month. It's totally free. We have speakers like Gene Kim, Magic Johnson, or even the astronaut Garrett Ryman, right? And we have also sessions so you can level up your skills in technologies, right? So please comment our booth, visit us, let's connect, let's see how we can help you with Microsoft Azure and Dynatrace to level up your game. Thank you very much. Have a great day.